In this video, you're going to get your first introduction to a different language known as CSS. This is not HTML anymore. This is going to be CSS. However, the CSS is going to work with the HTML. The HTML allowed you to create things or parts on your web page. So in this case, you have images that appear here. And the problem is that the sizes are out of control, especially this soccer ball. We want to be able to manipulate that and change that. So we're going to use CSS because that has to do with the style. So if you were to think of this as a construction company, the HTML is the language that allows you to build the different parts of the house. It's the wood, the drywall, the bricks. And CSS is going to actually help you style that. So it's the paint, the textures, the decorative parts. What we want to do is we want to control this image here, this first brain one. So we're going to use something called an ID to identify it, because there's two image elements, there's two image parts. How do we tell them apart? There's no way right now. That is straightforward. So we're going to add an ID. So this is called an attribute. Just like source was an attribute and the value here is in green, we're going to add an attribute known as ID. This is a special attribute. We're going to say that the ID is, so that's that equal sign, is picture1. That's what we're going to call it. And then we're going to go to the second one, and we're going to say the ID is equal to picture2. Now, picture1 and picture2 aren't special words. I could call this image1, image2. I could call this dog and cat, but that wouldn't make sense. Maybe I could call this brain and the bottom one soccer ball. That would make a little bit more sense. But we're going to go with picture1 and picture2. Now that we have an ID on it, let's go ahead and use that ID using CSS to give the instruction to make it small. So remember, the CSS is going to help style the web page. So we're going to write what is known as a CSS rule. We're going to say that we have an ID. So we say, or we identify the ID with this hashtag. So think of an ID as an ID number. So we're going to use this hashtag, and we're going to say picture1. So this is going to be a rule for picture1. And now the rule is going to have these curly braces. I'm going to press enter. The rule starts here, and the rule stops over here. So that's our entire rule. This whole thing is actually going to be the declaration block. The entire thing with the ID is the rule. And our rule is going to be the following. Let me align this a little bit better. Okay, so our rule is going to be the following. We want picture1 to have its height set to, let's say, 30 pixels. And look at the brain. It gets pretty small. That's because that's 30 pixels. Remember, a pixel back from the earlier units is pretty much one dot, tiny dot on the screen, and it depends the screen resolution. So now we're going to go ahead and change the height of picture2. Picture2, so that's a hashtag because it's an ID. Anytime you see and you write ID here, you need to use a hashtag. If you don't put the hashtag, this will not work. That's if I take the previous hashtag out, now it doesn't know what I'm talking about, so I need to put the hashtags in there. The rule is going to be find the ID picture2. Let's put our declaration block. This entire rule is going to say that the height of picture2 is going to be, let's make this a little bigger, 100 pixels. There we go. We've controlled, where right now the CSS is controlling and is styling these two HTML elements. Now if I want to separate these on separate lines, there's a couple of ways to do this, but right now we're just going to put a BR tag here, a break tag, to separate them, and now that force one to appear below the other. We could also change the behavior in CSS, and that would be the more appropriate way to have them act as block elements. But for right now, this will suffice.